Let's go. Pin. Okay, I don't pin the topic. Welcome everybody. Now, welcome everybody, my people, to this finally, this edition, this part 2 of our colonialism in Africa. Part 2, the colonial order. Today's topic now is double-edged, black competition and the colonial order. Black competition and the... my spiritual son is in the house. Woli Arole is in the house, everybody. That's my spiritual son. I'm very proud of him. I'm very, very proud of him. He's using the power of the ancestors. He's using it righteously. He's using it to show a lot of sheep the way. Yes, I'm very happy with him. Yes, thank you everybody for joining. You know, let's get to it. You see, first of all, the reason why this thing has taken too long, because I just need time. I need a break. I don't do any social media. I was just trying to do my thing. I just need to recalibrate, reassess, re-energize, re-strategize. You know, but now I'm back. And then many of them, they complain. You say you are going to do it in the morning. You say you are going to do it in the morning. Man, motherfuckers, it's morning somewhere now. It's morning in New York. It's morning now. Somewhere in the world is morning right now. Don't be constrained by this time, this fake time of man. This time, be constrained only by sacred time, spiritual time. Sacred time is the only time. The cyclical time, symbolic time. Not this around time we follow up and down. You see, the thing about time, this time is mad. It's Marine Barney that woke me up to the meaning of this kind of time. This time is oppressive. This time we follow is a time of oppression. It's an oppression. Is a form of oppression. The way they are explaining time to us, you know, is a form of oppression. We all know that time is cyclical. Time is cyclical. That's what they say. What goes around comes around. Even Oyibo people say history always repeats itself. History repeats itself. But we know time is a cycle. Why are they now teaching us time in a linear way? You know, you think right by nothing, time is straight line. Past, present, future. In the way that that future is always scary. Everybody is afraid. That's why everybody is working, hoarding money. You don't know what will happen tomorrow. My future. We are living a life that they now use time as a means of oppression. So time now thinking of this future has now become something that is scaring you from surviving in your present. Listen, understanding time is not easy. I don't want to use today to explain that one. Let's not go into that because we'll be here for 1 hour. Let's move. Let's move from that. So today's topic, you know, black competition and the colonial order. And before we really delve into it, I want to touch on something that is very, very important to me right now. You know, and that thing is our doctors' strike. You know, the doctors' strike in Nigeria today, they show me the real color of the people that are ruling this country. The real color of our press in this country. You see, this is why I always complain about the journalists in this country. I must complain about the media in this country. I complain about them because if Nigerian people mumu is caused by something, Nigerian media, influencers, everybody, you are 85%. You are 85%. 85% of the problem of Nigerian people. Because you are the one that makes sure that the narrative, the oppressive narrative, the evil narrative, the divisive narrative, the wicked narrative of this our elite becomes the norm in our society. That is what it is. That is what I'm seeing every time I look at you people. It's a shame on you for reporting this doctor strike as if the doctors of public hospital have no right to strike because they are signed to help human beings. They have no right to strike. Their strike is wickedness. Abi? Now, let me tell you people something. Do you know that this minister of labor, what is his name? Ngige. I don't even know. I forgot the name of Minister of Health. All of them and their family, nobody uses those hospitals that they manage. Even the most expensive hospital, public hospital in Nigeria, Aso Rock Hospital, is not good enough for them to use. Everybody is flying out to use hospital. Shall we know? None of them, their family, when they enter there, none of them, they use them. If they will use any hospital in Nigeria, they are using private hospital. Do you know what private hospital doctor does to people that don't have money? That one is immediate strike. They know they go send it, then they give money. If you go private hospital, you don't get back to pay them their money, which will bring their salary. The doctors in private hospital will strike immediately. All these bastards have not spoken about that one time before. It is okay for their own friends, doctors, the private doctors of Nigeria, to be striking immediately they see a poor person. Immediately a poor person step foot in any of these private hospitals, the doctors are on strike immediately. Because that's what you call it. They refuse to treat you for money, even though they've taken the Hippocratic oath. Poor people are dying in front of hospitals, up and down the place. They don't have 100,000, go outside, go and die. We don't have 150,000, go outside, go and die. This is happening in private hospitals every day. Nobody is telling us how callous private hospitals are. Nobody is telling us how evil private hospitals are for not taking in poor patients that don't have money. That every time poor people enter their place, they are on strike immediately. But when the people that treat the poor that you're supposed to pay their own money are now saying to you the same thing, say, help us, pay us our money. What? You see, all these things you have to understand. That's why I'm happy we are doing the colonial order. Slavery is not about taking away old people and slavery. They take slave. Who be slave? When they were carrying people from Africa, it's doctors they were stealing. Doctors, architects, engineers, priests, educationists, mothers, fathers. These were the people they were carrying away and saying slaves. Okay? So today, we say slavery is over. But you are making sure that our people cannot become a human being in their own country. We cannot be humans in our own country. For us to seek humanity, for us to be human beings, we have to run away and go and serve white people. Or now Arab people, as the case may be. I mean, that's the way things are run today. That's the slavery. What is different? What is different? Slavery simply meant the best of Africans, the youngest Africans, the most intelligent, were carted away. It's happening now. They say it's brain drain. As if they say that as if we are willing that we hate ourselves so much that we are running away from our country. Not that it's because our countries are made to be offensive to our humanity. But also we must understand that these things are challenges. African people must see all these things happening in our country, both our doctors that are running away, engineers, all of you. We must now see these things as our challenge, the challenge of our lifetime. You want to be something, see, your success in your work, the money they will pay you, can never give you satisfaction when you get to that twilight of your life. When you look back in your life, what have I done? This is our challenge, people. It is not time to run away. It is our challenge. It is our time to face these people. To show them what it means to be a true person of the motherland. To have melanin in our skin like this. To be of this place. It is our challenge. And it's a shame that in face of our challenge, everybody is becoming a coward and running away. It is a shame. But this is the one that we face it, we must decide to face this challenge. It is a challenge. It is a challenge. Whatever you want to call it, is a challenge. Are you ready to face it? Nobody should tell the doctors of Nigeria, public doctors, to go on strike. It is their only means to make these people listen. They deserve to feed their families. They deserve to be working in those hospitals with peace of mind so they can deliver good services to the people. Because we are in this country when you allow private doctors to strike almost every day in the face of any poor person that enters their hospital and refuse to work. Nobody can go and force a private hospital doctor to work in this country. Chebitu took the Hippocratic oath. He took it too. But look at all the newspaper trying to downgrade the doctors, paint the doctors in a bad light, as if there are some wicked people that their strike is insensitive. I wonder what Africans must do before we can even respect our humanity. The issue here is that they are not being paid. People must be paid when they are working. If there's no money, we understand. No, we are seeing lavish wedding where they share iPhone all over the place. And everybody that did that wedding is an officer of the Nigerian state. So it's Nigerian money they are using, both father side and mother side of the fucking wedding. Throwing that kind of wedding for a boy that doesn't even have a job. Then what do you want him to what will be his own ambition in life? Before he has a job, he's that kind of wedding he's experiencing, he's living that kind of life. What will now be his own ambition? What will he be able to do for himself in life without taking from the Nigerian people to match that kind of nonsense? You're talking about good family. You're talking about good family. We say you spoke Igbo from good family. You are seeing politicians' children without job, wasting money all over the place, entering club and drinking up and down. All of you be hailing them. Is that a good family behavior? Make boy or girl, we no get work, they spend money like that, and their papa gonna no get any better work. Now people work, they do. Now that one be better family. They don't know how to know better family, abi. Now go they call criminals better family. More not continue. So there we go. You see, this book, as I said, many people don't understand why this book means so much to me. This book really means a lot to me, So when I read them, real quick, just to show now, you see, now since I mark the pages, this book, when I read them, there's nothing. Every page was eye-opening, was decolonizing, was destroying decades of indoctrination. Igbo people are fucking amazing. We have to give it up for our Eastern brothers and sisters. Chiwenzu, Chino Achebe. Igbo people, when they are right, they are fucking right. But the problem is when they are wrong too, they are fucking wrong. Oh, Jesus. But big ups to the man there. And finally also I finally found him through someone that I know that is very close. I've been looking for him for like 4 years. Finally found this man. He's a recluse, I think. And I'm going to make sure I go and meet him. Just to sit at the feet of people like this is what I live for. So yeah, black competition also, I want to really quickly touch on it. Why African people, we cannot find value in ourselves unless we are competing with one another. Except we are trying to show that we are better than the other black man. When you read this book towards the end, if you have this book, it talks about this, all this African first black man to do this, first black man to do that. He's never the first black man to bring water to his people. First black man to stop corruption in his country. He's always the first black man to achieve one kind of thing in one white institution. That's the only thing we praise. We are not looking for the first black man. You understand? We are not looking for the first black man to stop corruption in Nigeria. First black man to build proper world-class education for Nigerian people. No, those kind of things be our own first. Concern us. Madness. First black this, first black that. Oh, madness. It's a mad thing. So everything in our life is now a competition. And especially in music. I understand if our athletes. Super Dele, yes, this is one of Chiwenzu's books. I have it too, Decolonizing the African Mind. Very great book. But this one I'm reading for is The West and the Rest of Us. The West and the Rest of Us. White predators, black slavers, and the African elites. You understand? But I'll come to that. That'll be, now about 14 pages. So it will take us a little bit of time to read this. So, the colonial order is the chapter. This is the final chapter in the colonial series I'm doing to finish the one we did last time. So we're going to do the colonial order, which will be the last time. So we are our own first. We need to find our own first. The first person to design efficient mass transit for African people. The first person to design efficient healthcare system for African people. These are the first that we must now, be looking for. But you know, this is another discussion too that we'll have another day. So this competition amongst ourselves is we must kill it. I see it in everything we do. African people cannot achieve anything anymore if it's not if it's not relative to what another African person is doing in terms of competition. Vis-a-vis, I'm doing it more than you. You know, even if you go into the club to drink, we must show that I can drink more than you, and buy more drink than you. You see, this behavior, this mindset that the elite of Nigeria put into us, it is to make sure that we never have solidarity, we never have camaraderie. It is not even okay for somebody to be successful. You must be more successful than. And success that is more successful than, it's not success. You understand? It is fear masking as success. It is fear masking itself as success. You understand? We must be successful because we are. We must no longer live in the world where you are seeking. We must reclaim our humanity, African people. See? Because, you know, we live for this world there. Not be like, let the drag suffer. Is land you get sense. I suffer, I suffer past you. You don't chop this one before. You don't chop Paco and this one before. I suffer. That one to the apple is land you are very correct. Everything in competition, my brothers and sisters. Even in our classrooms, where we should raise ideas, where we should make our children cooperate with one another, share ideas. We put them in competition. We'll be giving them first place, second place, third place, all those kind of things. In real life, man, parents will begin to judge their children by that first place, second place that they give them in the school. You come home, your children, they say, We must shed this cloak of competition. We must shed this cloak of competition. We must shed it. Black competition, you know, is what is completely destroying our solidarity. It is destroying our solidarity. Married with the narrative of our media that's coming down from the elites. This is destroying our solidarity completely. African people can no longer speak for themselves. We are always speaking for some kind of, you know, this our abstract image of ourselves that we're trying to portray. That we're trying to portray to the world. It makes no sense. Go on social media, everybody try to show what they have, the biggest thing, my God, come on. Come on, you know, so yeah. They have killed, is that true? Did they kill Shore's brother today? Wow, I'm going to check up on that. That's sad for Presio. I will have to give him a call later and check it out. But your black competition, it is not good. We watch our actors, our actresses on TV, and this one is better than this one. This one is better than this one. Today, they asked me in an interview I was doing, who is my favorite Nigerian artist? I like everybody. Everybody is good, you know. Why must I have a favorite? And if I have a favorite, why do you want me to share it with people I don't even know? Why do you want me to project that to the world? You know? Why are you trying to make me use my own influence, and which is part of my choice? Because once I project my choice to the world, anybody that likes me, that I have influence over, they will immediately say, oh, this, if Seun likes this guy, he must be good, he must be. No, we're done with this shit. I like everybody. Everybody is great, everybody is doing a good job. That's the answer to give, you know. Why should we have favorites and all of that shit? You know, and why are we portraying it? Why are we showing it to the? It's like going to take vaccine and trying to, because you took vaccine, you're trying to tell everybody to take vaccine. No, it's your health. Health is a personal issue. Personal issue. Like, you will not show me your medical records. Exactly. So why are you showing me that you took vaccine? You know, just keep it to yourself. If you want to take the vaccine, take it. If you don't want to take it, good for you. Don't take it. This aspect of everybody trying to use their influence, trying to push everybody, this is crazy. But, you know, let me not digress too much. You know. Let me not digress too much. So, our competition now, part of it where they make us fail. You know, where they make us failing, many easy things we're supposed to do. You know, and I don't want to talk too much on that because this page for this thing we won't read long, very long. But it's important that we address our competition, this unhealthy black competition that exists in everything that we do. You know, we see the first person to do this, blah 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 blah. The first person to do that. I mean, come on, man. We're way past this shit. We need to move ahead from that. Me, man, let me not lie, you. I'm sharing it today because it's something that I thought about recently. Me, man, before, you know, hey, Obama, first president of America, first black man to be president, Colin Powell, first black man to be Secretary of Defense. But go and look at what they did, and also, you minus that, I mean, anyway, so I just remember that when are we going to start looking for greatness in our own institutions and trying to build things and put things around our own self instead of going to look for all these first in other people's institutions, you know, and all those kind of things. First Nigerian to be employed in Harvard, in Yale. I mean, what's the meaning of that? First Nigerian to be, what's the meaning of that? He's employed in Yale. What about our own universities here? Don't we need that brain to work here and give us good education too? Because it's only politicians' children in Nigeria that can go to that Yale. It's only the rich people in Nigeria children that can go to that Harvard that guy has gone to. So all the other people will be Nigerian like him. We not go access that brain. I don't understand, you know. So we need to end that because now they catch us for the job. Because instead of us to see this first as our own loss, say, we are losing great things. They are making it seem as if we are winning. You understand? Because it's a competition now. So we make it seem as if the people are winning when we are actually losing. You understand? Because you are thinking it's a competition. You know. So anyway, let's move on. So to the colonial order, I am reading from Chiwenzu's The West and the Rest of Us as part of this educational series I'm holding on my special program, Bird's Eye View on Instagram. And as everybody knows, everybody's telling me to monetize my show. I don't charge people. There's no way for you to give me money, say if you wanted to. You know, this is service. This is service. So let's go. The colonial order. It is chapter 4 of the book. I read chapter 3. How Africa was the colonial conquest of Africa. Chapter 3. Now, so after they conquered Africa, now the order, how they ran it. And I think people remember, I said, I want us to read these 2 chapters, to see these 2 things, to see if there's any difference in our situation back then and what is going on now. In case you did not catch the first part, it is the last BEV I've done before now. So just go to my IGTV, you see this thing that you can get it. Yes, this everybody just putting the price of the book, 350. I have one that is 800 safe. This is the money of one Dom Perignon in the club that you people go and drink. That's why you don't see me in club. All my money of Dom Perignon and Moet and Chandon, I've used it to buy book finish. My library is very, very expensive, I tell you. You know, but you have to give up some things for some things. You know? So let's go. So this for us to see, you know, because we must understand what has come before. So that at least we can recognize it if we see it again. And understand, because since that happened, we have seen the course it has taken. So we'll know how much we have to resist or accept it. You know, it's important, right? So let's go. According to Lord Lugard, who was one of the most impressive of the British colonizing agents in Africa, the conqueror who brought both Uganda and Nigeria under British heels, and the architect of British stapled colonial policy of indirect rule. The partition, so Lord Lugard says, the partition of Africa was, as we all recognize, due primarily to the economic necessity of increasing the supplies of raw materials and food to meet the needs of the industrialized nations of Europe. I repeat, Lord Lugard says, the man who actually conquered us, you know, and he did Uganda too. The partition of Africa was, as we all recognize, due primarily to the economic necessity of increasing the supplies of raw materials and food to meet the needs and demand of industrialized nations of Europe. Brothers and sisters, this is 200 years after this fucking man said these words. This 200 fucking years after. Is your country doing anything different? Even though they say you have independence. What is different in Nigeria? Our raw materials, our food. This is why we cannot afford food. I keep saying it. It is irritating me that Nigerians are taking contracts from foreigners to grow food in Africa and ship it to Europe while Africans are hungry. It is treason. It is treachery. Forget our oil. Forget even the mineral resources. This fucking shit with food. That all our land is used to fucking grow cash crops for the benefit of some people that we don't even know, that don't even care about us, that are millions of miles away from our homeland, while we cannot afford the basic necessities to give our family balanced meals every day, is the most annoying bullshit that happens in this country. Okay, so I continue. Having by conquest become masters of the continent, the European rulers of Africa began to seize resources and to organize their rule for a long and profitable stay. First, they began to take out of African use or occupancy whatever land they wanted, and they simultaneously assembled African labor to mine the land for gold, copper, diamonds, asbestos, tin, iron, and zinc, or to farm it for wool, cattle, tobacco, timber, sugar, bananas, coffee, cashew, sisal, palm oil, and palm kernels, cocoa, cotton, rubber, and groundnuts. But as the African people were reluctant to dispossess themselves of their lands and unwilling to work for the profit of Europeans, such land as the Europeans wanted had to be confiscated and African labor compelled. The means of doing this was the adopting by a white ruling race of legal measures designed expressly to compel the individual natives to whom they apply to quit land which they occupy and by which they can live in order to work in white service for the private gain of the white man. When lands formerly occupied by natives are confiscated or otherwise annexed for white owners, the creation of a labor supply out of the dispossessed native is usually a secondary subject. The way that Tinubu said they pursue people for Lagos today, they seize their land. See, they don't get C of O. They do until tomorrow. Legal or illegal, these measures were often quite brutal. For instance, because they were considered too low and untamable for work in the white man's mines and on his farms, the Bushmen of South Africa were expelled from their homeland. In many cases, they were like the Amerindians in the United States, simply exterminated. War, murder, strong drink, syphilis, and other diseases are chief instruments of a destruction commonly couched under the euphemism contact with a superior civilization. The land thus cleared of native passes into white possession, and white men must work it themselves or introduce other lower industrial peoples to work it for them. You understand now why they ended slavery? You understand now why they're not coming to carry us in droves? The things they need in their new Europe is here in Africa. They are not going to come here and work for it. They're not going to dig mines, enter a hole and ground. They need us to do these things. And we are still doing it. We are still doing it. Not for our own benefit. The oil in Nigeria, you can't even refine it in Nigeria. We don't even refine it. Not for with gold, everything, tin, copper, lumber, steel, whatever they're taking. Are we using it? Is it for us? Okay. Where expulsion and extermination were deemed unprofitable, other methods were tried. Some were quite ingenious. In Buchanan land in 1897, a small local riot involving a few drunken natives was fomented and used as a pretext for expelling 8,000 of the natives from lands inalienably secured to them by the Buchanan Land Annexation Act of 1895. The rest of the population, 30,000 of them, were forcibly evacuated to other and poorer districts. The land confiscated was turned over to British occupation. Other property besides land was also confiscated. For instance, after the First Matabele War, wholesale confiscation of the cattle of the Matabele for the purpose of stocking the farms of white settlers provoked a second war. The subsequent defeat of the Matabele led to further confiscations of their cattle. In despair, the conquered complained, "Our country is gone and our cattle. We have nothing to live for. Our women are deserting us. The white man does as he likes with them. We are the slaves of the white man. We are nobody and have no right or laws of any kind. I mean, in this thing I'm reading to you, just remove white man and add maybe Buhari or any politician in Nigeria. Add their name. Many of these are our rich elites. Add their name. It will fit perfectly. Our country is gone and our cattle. We have nothing to live for. Our women are deserting us. The Nigerian politician does as he likes with them. We are slaves of the Nigerian politicians. We are nobody and have no rights or laws of any kind. You see as he rhyme? You see as he just move together? I mean, together without any removing. But there was none to give them redress. To compel labor from Africans, legal coercion was widely used. In Sierra Leone, a high and burdensome hot tax was imposed. Its collection was harshly enforced. In order to earn money to pay it, Africans had to sell their labor to white men. Where taxation failed to turn out an adequate supply of African labor, compulsory labor ordinances made it obligatory on persons of the laboring classes to give their labor for public purposes or be called out by their chiefs or other native superiors. You understand? You know, remember the chiefs from the chiefs, all these elites are already working with the white man who suppressing us. Don't forget to, I want you to remember the last chapter. So when we finish from it, you should go and read that last one again, just to remember, you know, the setting. Or this is the order of how it now worked. You understand? The order they involve. We are not these people. I keep telling you, we are not these people. These chiefs, kings, political leaders, elites in Nigeria, all of them, go and check their history. Slave trader descendants, they all worked actively with the white man to put us where we are. Maybe a few percentage of them were employed later after the damage had been done. But the majority of them, that's where they all descend from, our suffering and oppression. They were the Africans that were willing to sell other Africans away for things. And they're still the ones in charge, them and their descendants and their agents and their workers, and their cousins. And they scatter themselves all over the whole Nigeria. So continuing their master's work. In 1895, such an ordinance was passed in the Gold Coast to compel chiefs to furnish carriers for a military expedition against Ashanti, but where, as in South Africa, the chiefs did not, for whatever reason, provide their allotted quotas of labor, native police were sent out to collect the labor. Native police, so in another time, native police working for the white man. I don't tell you this thing before. Police who are mean and then create them. Their job that time was to kill us to protect white man interest. And that's what they are still doing till tomorrow. Till any day. I want you people to see clearly the situation you are in. Case closed. That's why I'm doing this series. And we can continue the normal bird's eye view, talking about what's going on in our country today. You know, how we can come out of it. You know. In South Africa, in order to meet the insatiable demands of the mines, methods were more fruitful than compulsory labor ordinances were devised. The grand plan was to break up the tribal system, which gives solidarity and some political and economic strength to native life, set the Kafir on an individual footing as an economic bargainer, to which he is wholly unaccustomed, take him by taxation or other stimulus for his locality, put him down under circumstances where he has no option but to labor at mines. This is taken from the policy of the Glen Grey Act in South Africa. This was an act, you know, law. Some humane missionaries thought this plan went too far. They thought it was immoral and they demurred. Against their sentimental qualms about destroying the tribal system of the Kafir, lofty arguments were put forward. A magistrate declared, the labor question and the land question are indissolubly bound together. In my opinion, it is of little use framing enactment to compel unwilling persons to go out to work. It is like the old saw about leading a horse to the water. You can take him there, but you cannot make him drink. In the same way, you may impose your labor tax, but you cannot make your unwilling persons work. Create a healthy thirst in your horse, and he will drink fast enough. Similarly, create the necessity for the native to work, and he will work, and none better. Hitherto, under our commercial tenure system, there has been little absolute necessity for our young natives to leave their homes to work. The land supplies them with food and few shillings to buy a blanket, and as soon as the young man marries, is entitled to receive his lot of arable land. But once this is stopped, and it will be stopped by the survey and the individual tenure, a young man before he marries a wife will have to be able to support his wife. And to obtain this, he must work. And once having married her, he must still work to maintain her and himself. And once the necessity of work is created, there will be no lack of men ready and willing to work. This is from the Blue Book of Native Affairs, also from South Africa. So you see how they made us work. Things that we in Africa, we have socialized for years. The things that we have owned for years. Land that we didn't need to be working for anybody. Work for who? Every African man was comfortable in himself. They now created a way at which those things were taken away. So you now have to go and work for the things that you already own. For your own thing where you get to, you now go and work for them to give it to you as change. And the way people hate politicians, when they give you your money, they've stolen from you. Quickly reassured by such magisterial opinion, the humanitarian missionaries dismissed their qualms and went along with the plan. It must have seemed part of God's work to teach the lazy native the dignity of toil by creating in him a healthy taste for doing the white man's work. The British, of course, were not alone in confiscating land and compelling labor. The Germans, after winning hegemony over Tanganyika, built forts in strategic places, planted white settlements, suppressed revolts, exacted taxes, and conscripted African labor for their plantations. Their treatment of their conscripts was so bad that some African chiefs like Kinyasi of Usambara, rather than supply labor to German planters, abdicated their client chieftaincies. The ferocity of the planter regime soon drove all the people of southern Tanganyika into a united rebellion. The Maji Rebellion that raged for several years before it was stamped out. So don't let anybody tell you that your ancestors didn't fight. This is another story. For the 400 years we were here, there were over 480 anti-colonialism, anti-slavery rebellions in Africa. It is this same elite that betrayed. So anyway, let's continue. But it was in French Equatorial Africa and in the Congo Free State of the Belgians that the alienation of African land and property and the conscription of African labor were carried to Nazi-style perfection. In the region of the Congo Basin, avaricious French and Belgian traders who claimed to have come to Africa to bring law and order and enlightenment to a supposedly dark and disordered continent practiced systemic cruelties on the African population. The noble purpose of it all was to extract rubber as cheaply and abundantly as feasible. In the French Congo, the concessionaire companies acquired by their charters the sole right of possession of the negotiable product of the country. They became the de facto owners of the rubber trees and vines within their respective concessions. This implies, of course, dispossession of the natives. Dispossession of the natives implied, in its turn, the immediate cessation of the act of purchase and sale, otherwise trade, between the native population and the white men. The years which followed were to witness the attempt to compel, by force of arms, some 9 million African natives, or as many of that total who could be reached, to submit not only to be robbed, but to spend their lives in the extremely arduous and dangerous task of gathering and preparing India rubber in the virgin forest on behalf of a few wealthy financiers in Brussels, Paris, and Antwerp. The concessionaires settled down to their work, enforcing as much rubber as possible out of the natives. In the lower part of the French Congo, the effects were immediate. Here, the French population had been traders with white men for decades. Here, the native population had been traders with white men for decades. To their bewilderment, they found themselves suddenly faced with a demand for rubber as a tax from the administration, and with a demand for rubber as by right divine from strange white men who claimed to own it and claimed power to compel the real owners to collect it for whatever the former chose to pay. The trading stations where the native had been wont to carry their produce and barter it, they were forbidden to approach. The natives of the French Congo did what any other people would have done. They declined to be despoiled of their property and robbed of the fruit of their labors. The chiefs appealed to the authorities and asked what they had done to be so punished. Appeals were in vain. Refusals to work rubber was met with attempted compulsion. The natives rose. In the Ngume region, no fewer than 5 military expeditions had been sent against the natives in as many months at the request of the local concessionaire company. In the Shari, the chief of an important tribe had been arrested because his people did not bring in enough rubber and had died in prison. In the neighborhood of Bangui, an official had caused 58 women and 10 children to be taken as hostages to compel their male relatives to bring in rubber. In 3 weeks, 45 of these women and 2 of the children had died of starvation and want of air, packed tightly in a small dwelling place. At Fort Sibut, 119 women and little girls had been similarly arrested and many had died. An official circular had prescribed that these hostage houses should be erected in the bush and out of sight of possible travelers. In one of the concessions of the lower Congo, the natives had been forbidden to make salt in order to compel them to buy it from the company, which would only sell it against large quantities of rubber. Widespread sickness ensuing, salt being an indispensable article of native diet in tropical Africa. This was from Ed Morrell's, he took this part from Ed Morrell's book, The Black Man's Body. Nice book. I gave it to my wife to read also. Very, very good book. Amidst this rubber mad orgy of floggings and burning of villages, of rape and mutilation of natives being used as targets for revolver practice and as human experiment to test the efficacy of dynamite cartridges, of hostage houses in which men and women and children perished, hundreds of thousands died or were uprooted. Terrified by the military oppressions, a majority of the natives fled their homes into the rainforest to escape the burning and the slaughter. A junior French Congo official, himself an agent of this man-made Holocaust, wrote, "The dead, we no longer count them. The villages, horrible charnel houses disappear in this yawning gulf. 1,000 diseases follow in our footstep." You know, these white people, they brought syphilis, gonorrhea, chickenpox, all these things to Africa, you know. I mean, chickenpox, not smallpox, sorry. 1,000 diseases followed in our footsteps, and this martyrdom continues. We white men must shut our eyes not to see the hideous dead, the dying who curse us, and the wounded who implore, the weeping women and the starving children. We must stop our ears not to hear the lamentations, the cries, the maledictions which rise from every foot of land, from every tuft of grass. And this was not war, but peace. The Pays Français. On this specimen, the French civilization mission, André Gide, after extensive tours in 1926, wrote, "What have these big concessionaire companies done for the country? Nothing. The concessions were given with the hope that the companies would develop the country. They have exploited it, which is not the same thing as development. They have bled and squeezed it like an orange whose skin is sooner or later discarded." Look, for me, I say it is crazy. It is crazy that I am actually reading this chapter with all of you, because it is madness. You know, it is madness. It is madness that we see the colonial order and we still see it in our eyes every day. We still see it in our face every day. You know, and at some point, we as motherland people, we need to find our way to change this order. I mean, it's about time. This is our mission. This is our mission. This is our mission, you know. Anyway, let's go. Despotism was their policy. It was applied everywhere with varying degrees. I'm skipping a lot of the examples, because if we read the examples are a lot. I can't be, you know, this kind of thing, different regions, how they did in Congo, how they killed in. Yeah, we know. Yes, so let me just continue to the main topic. Despotism was their policy. It was applied everywhere with varying degrees of thoroughness. But almost everywhere, because of the small supply of European manpower and because of a desire to hold imperial expenses down to a minimum, it was found imperative to temper the Rhodes Principle and transfer to loyal Africans as much of the burden of running the empires as was compatible with European dominance. I repeat, but almost everywhere, because of the small supply of European manpower and because of a desire to hold imperial expenses down to a minimum, it was found imperative to temper the Rhodes Principle. Go back to the last chapter that we did together. Remember what the Rhodes Principle is? Just take it and use them, and kill them. To temper the Rhodes Principle. And some people today are Rhodes scholars. African people are Rhodes scholars, going for Rhodes grants. CC Rhodes grant. No say we don't mad. To transfer to loyal Africans as much of the burden of running the empires as was compatible with European dominance. Shifting some of the administrative burdens of empire to reliable Africans not only lowered the financial and manpower cost of empire. Politically, it helped the new order to reach some measure of accommodation with the conquered African elites, whose order was being replaced. A two-tiered administrative machinery was devised. A thin layer of white bureaucrats controlled a layer of black auxiliaries who administered the rest of the population. By the mechanism, the conquerors were able to provide low-cost security for the European missionaries, traders, and other persons who would create the necessary institutions and infrastructure for exploiting African resources. The degree of freedom, power, and prestige granted to the African auxiliaries varied. It was high in Uganda and northern Nigeria, low in French Africa and the Belgian Congo. Where the auxiliaries were granted the most influence, there was voluble talk about indirect rule, where not the assumption has been that European rule was direct. It was in reality never quite direct. It was always operated through an echelon of African auxiliaries. In French Africa, a chief was a mere functionary appointed to administer for the French and administrative units, in contrast with an emir in Nigeria who ruled for the British. A French African chief had no right to take any part of the taxes he collected. Officially, he had a salary, and if he kept part of the taxes he collected, that was technically illegal, though normally overlooked unless the French wanted a pretext for ousting him. He had no courts, no police, no prisons of his own, and often as not, he came under the jurisdiction of the indignant, the summary administrative justice under which all Africans are subject, barred from citizenship, groaned, and at times revolted. The prefect or commandant was loudly and swaggeringly the French African chief's boss. In a way, British political agents, residents, and district officers were not encouraged to demonstrate to the Africans they supervised. The effective power in a colony was the governor. The administration he headed made local decisions under broad guidelines framed by the imperial government in Europe. Though his administration was quite open to pressure from white settlers, missionaries, and traders, it was at best paternalistic to the African population and was usually unresponsive to their needs. As part of their accommodation with the traditional elites they had subdued, the British allowed them some purely advisory representation on the governor's legislative council. The rest of the African population had no voice there, consigned to a subservient existence outside the guided proconsular court. The population was bound and trust with a variety of unfreedom. In Leopold Congo Free State, all African had lost his right to his land. His trade was made illegal and destroyed. He was turned into a slave. In French Africa, he lost all freedom of expression. By rules of the indignant, he could be imprisoned without trial for even a whispered criticism of the conquerors. In British West Africa, though he might criticize, he could not advocate a restoration of African sovereignty. The penalty for such talk was imprisonment. There was often no press at all. If there was one, it was either sponsored by the administration or intimidated into docility with libel and sedition laws. Without political representation, without freedom of expression, the only avenues left when the colonized Africans could hear his grievances were violent or illegal. Railway strikes occurred in Sierra Leone in 1919 and 1926. From 1937 to 1938, cocoa growers in the Gold Coast refused to sell their produce to European exporters when the latter ganged up and forced prices well below world market prices. When women rioted in Aba, Nigeria, against taxation and British methods of indirect rule, 50 were killed and many others were injured. When the British attempted to overthrow the autonomy of the Egba had been guaranteed, when the British attempted to withdraw the autonomy the Egba had been guaranteed, and had enjoyed under the Treaty of Protection that brought them under British rule, matters exploded into Adubi uprising of 1819 at Abeokuta. Such was their political order. However strong the petition from African lawyer politicians, however severe the strike by workers, however destructive the riots against the specific measures, however violent the revolt or rebellions of conscripts and peasants, no deviation from this arrangement was permitted up until World War II. What kind of economic order did they create to extract the continent's resources for the benefit of Europe? One objective of the invasion has been to enable Europeans to get behind African middlemen and trade directly in the hinterland. Once they did so, they either killed off African trade entirely and substituted slavery, as in the French and Belgian Congos, or they brought African trade under the strict control of European monopolies. For instance, when the Roger Niger Company established its authority over the Delta hinterland, it introduced obstructive measures to deprive the coastal Africans of the hinterland trade. Its action against the city-state of Brass is a case in point. Though Brass lay outside the company's territory, brassmen who ventured into the company's territory areas. Sorry, there's a comma here disturbing me. Brassmen who ventured into the company territory, areas they had traditionally traded in, were required to pay £50 a year for a trading license, another £10 a year for each market they traded in, another £100 a year if they traded in spirits, the very basis of their traditional trade, and a miscellaneous assortment of other company duties. But the company went beyond such restraining terms to try to starve Brass of trade in its own port by requiring that all commodities traded in its territory pass through the company's port in Akassa. It is not surprising, therefore, that Brass reacted to such strangulation of its trade by raiding Akassa and destroying the company's stores in 1895. Of course, with such a fine pretext, British consular forces lost little time in attacking Brass and capturing its capital. The conquerors, in their economic offensive, squeezed out the African middlemen, whose wholesale operations declined. They were maneuvered out and constrained to be retailers of imports or produce buying agents of European companies, who fixed prices stiffly against the African profits declined. The few European traders who sought fair trade opportunities and who attempted to help African economic resistance by supplying capital to them were ostracized by their own kind. At Onitsha, at the beginning of the 20th century, one Englishman, John Murray Stuart Young, attempted to protect African traders from the economic aggression launched by monopolistic European companies who wanted to exclude Africans from every level of trade. His effort to organize the African traders in Onitsha and to mobilize capital to enable them to compete with the Europeans earned him the gratitude of the African trading community of Onitsha. The European companies, in retaliation, contrived towards Young's economic ruin. But the elimination of African middlemen was not the only measure taken to create the colonial economic order. European penetration to the market of the interior also dislocated the trade patterns of the hinterland. For example, for over 1,000 years, West African gold, ivory, and kola nuts had gone north from the forest belt, and together with leather, ostrich feathers, handicrafts, and slaves from the savannah belt had crossed the Sahara in great caravans from such centers as Kano, Gao, Kukawa, Timbuktu, and Walata. Desert socks, silks, paper, and assorted European goods had come back with the caravans and had been distributed along the trade routes down to the coast. One of the grievances of the European invaders, had been that African hinterland still looked across the desert for its trade. They felt Europe should have that trade. With conquest, they took control of it. Entrepôts were established on the coast to fetch the cotton, groundnut, tin, gold, iron, copper, rubber, and palm produce of the interior to their warehouses on the coast. Waterways were used at first, then railways and feeder roads were constructed. With this coastward shift of the export trade, the caravan trade declined. Rendered irrelevant to the new direction of flow of African resources, Africa's transcontinental trade routes disappeared, for internal trade followed the path of easier communication and organized itself around European economic and communications grid. In other areas of economic activity, European demands began to dictate patterns of development Old iron, tin, copper, and gold mines were expanded. New ones opened. Europeans wanted coffee, cocoa, rubber, and banana in prodigious quantities. New plantations rose to supply them. With the rise of a Eurocentric sector, a dual economy was created. It had two largely unintegrated parts, export and subsistence. This part entered into unequal competition. For the produce of the land, it entered into unequal competition for the productive resources of the land. As has already been shown, land and labor were extensively coerced from their traditional employment and turned over to the production for export to Europe. African food production consequently suffered. In the case of Senegal, for example, this food thing I keep telling you people, African food production consequently suffered. In the case of Senegal, for example, a crash program undertaken by the French to grow all the granules they could took so much land and manpower away from food production that by the end of the colonial era, instead of being self-sufficient, Senegal had become heavily dependent on imports to feed her population. By the 1960s, she had to import up to 40% of her grain. What is most significant about this colonized economy is that developments were dictated by the perceived needs of Europe. Considerations of African separate welfare hardly entered at all. If measures undertaken for benefit of Europe brought some gain to Africa, fine. If not, it didn't matter. In the economic sense, even more than the political, the conquered areas became part of overseas France, overseas Portugal, and till the terms were not in vogue, overseas Belgium and overseas Britain. At this point, before I go on to finish, because there's only 2 more pages before it is done. Before I go on to finish, I want people to understand this part of this thing. Like, whatever we gain from our continent now is a byproduct of what business needs. You understand? Whatever this government does for us today is a byproduct of what business needs, and it's those needs that they give us as development. So they can give us GSM phone, and this is because businesses need phone to work, and this is why we have internet, because they need internet to work. If these businesses do not have these things, this Nigerian government will not provide these things for the Nigerian people. The only reason why we have anything, the only reason why they build roads, the reason why they are building railroad now, I'll tell you, the only reason why the Nigerian government is building railroad now is because the road is too dangerous. The bandits are hijacking their goods and stealing their goods on the road. So now they want to use rail to carry the goods. The only reason we had roads in Nigeria in the first place, as you have seen, from the interior to the coast, first was waterways they did there, and they built roads, everything leading to the coast, leading out, is to carry goods, not human beings. These are our roads. You travel these roads, you can see that these roads are not for human beings. These roads are for goods. We can see that. So let's all open our eyes and understand what is going on as I come into this final stretch of reading this chapter, and we end today's live. I'm very happy to end this series. A lot of reading. I can't believe I'm reading this chapter again, and I'm reading it out loud. Such hard work. To buttress under this general arrangement, there was a European monopoly of profit and resource. Both were creamed off to Europe by the white management at the top of the economic pyramid. Till today, same shit. Such was the colonial economy, an appendage economy of Europe, an economy whose productivity was geared to the requirement of foreign trade, an economy designed to bleed the continent and neglect African needs. That's why every government you hear in Nigeria will be telling you about foreign investment. When you hear any government come and say foreign investment, once you say, I'm here to raise foreign investment, just know that that government is your enemy. Is your enemy. Foreign investment. What happened to local growth, local development? Everybody, foreign investment. Because they are too lazy to build their own. Too lazy. That's it, too lazy. And they don't have the love of Africans. They are not their parents from the time of their great-grandparents that they've been betraying Africans and selling us away. It is that mindset. They are ashamed. It's not them to be ashamed. We are traitors, and change their way. They will be justifying it to their descendants that is Africans that are animals. They will be justifying their behavior, teaching that so they build. So just know, you go open your eye. To buttress and crown their creation, the founders of the colonial order embarked on the cultural reorganization of Africa. If the African auxiliaries of empire were to be docile and loyal servants, their allegiance, that's those chiefs and all those people they employ around them, the soldiers, all these police, everybody that they use to subdue all of us, they are supporters, they are black supporters that are enjoying the benefits of their treachery today while we are still looking at them. You understand? If the African auxiliaries of empire were to be docile and loyal servants, their allegiance to Africa had to be undermined. Total admiration for Europe had to be instilled into them. Beside the technical skills they would need to carry out their practical duties to their employers, they were to be taught Christian values of a servile-making sort. Unquestioning obedience to white men was presented as a cardinal virtue. The retooling of their minds and values was entrusted to the schools. Whether run by missionaries hunting for black converts for their white heaven, or run by colonial bureaucrats, these imperialist schools not only taught reading, writing, and arithmetic to their inmates, they also stuffed the heads of their victims with church devotional hymns. Even till my time, we go to school in the morning, we have to sing praise and worship song. Fill their psyches with submissive Christian attitudes and undermine their attachment to the culture of their ancestors. These schools inculcated in their words a Christian theology and cosmology and a Western individualist ethos that weakened their African identity, destroyed their commitment to an African communalist ethos, and used their sense of patriotic responsibility, and erased their sense of patriotic responsibility to Africa. See, this point is very important. This point is very important. That it is through our education that we are made to be so individualistic, that we respect nothing in this world except white man's money. Because you just say it's money. I only care about the money. Money is white man's money. And it is important, they want it to be that way. That nothing, even your brother, your blood, people will be, in Africa, people will praise you for selling out your blood for money. People will praise you for betraying your friends. We praise you for destroying your people because of money. We are a spiritual people. We are a sacred people that have now been taught that the world, our world, must be despiritualized. That our world must be desacralized. And then the only thing that we hold sacred is money. You understand that this is a weakness. It is. That's why I'm reading this. So, I just have to get through it. If you are ready to decolonize, get on the decolonizing. But if you're not, keep it going. Good for you. Weaned on other folk tales, schooled in the anthologies of Judeo-Christian law, fed a truncated history of Africa according to which there had been nothing before the European arrival, save perhaps primitive savagery. That's why they always teach us about Mary Slessor. Always, every day. Indoctrinated with the anti-nationalist history in which the invading Lugard and Mongo were portrayed as heroic saviors of Africa, and in which the leaders of the African resistors were, if mentioned at all, portrayed as savages and venal obstructors of civilizing European influences. Let me repeat that, in which the leaders of the African resistance were, if mentioned at all, portrayed as savages and venal obstructors of civilizing European influences, and taught to venerate the heroes of European history, Napoleon, Prince Henry the Navigator of Portugal, Elizabeth the Pirate Queen of England. The minds processed by the colonial schools were left in gaping ignorance of their separate past. Where they were given a glimpse of their separate past, they were taught to hold it in embarrassed and even hostile contempt. They were made to feel that their history, their worthwhile history at any rate, began with their induction into the Western orbit of affairs. Where their separate cultural and historical identity was not obliterated, it emerged confused. Their loyalties were consequently transferred from their genetic communities to those of their conquerors. After their indoctrination, some came to view themselves as black Englishmen, or black Frenchmen, or black Portuguese. Thus, the colonial schools manufacture meek, grateful, and loyally submissive Africans, in many of whom every desire for that cultural and political sovereignty their ancestors had fought to keep had been abolished. The substitution of European for African values was carried out everywhere, not just in schools. African values were derided and attacked. For instance, the individualist principle of private property, when applied to land by the new laws, attacked those African principles of land tenure where rights of ownership belonged to the community as a corporate entity, and rights in use were periodically assigned to individuals by the community through its trustees, be they chiefs, king, or elders. On such principles, one acquired rights to a given stretch of land for as long as one used it productively. When one ceased to do so, such rights reverted to the community for reassignment to other users. No individual, chief or not, had the right to permanently alienate or dispose of land. Only the community or its representatives could dispose of land, and then only for a limited time and after adequate consultation with the community. But under the new dispensation and through the general upholding of European attitudes, more and more land was alienated from corporate trusteeship and transformed into private property. You can see what that billionaire we marry young girl, I don't forget his name. What's his name? What they do for a community, where they take their land by force, killing them and all of that. What's his name? We marry this actress. We are shameless in this country, sharp. Thus, did all the colonial institutions contribute to the fashion a breed of Euro-Africans and to refashion Africa in some debased image of Europe? To look upon this colonial order as a purely African entity and ignore its link to Europe is to find an African class of chiefs, minor bureaucrats and traders tying the toil and lives of the populace to the interests of the ruling white administrators. Let me take it again. To look upon this colonial order as a purely African entity and ignore its links to Europe is to find an African class of chiefs, minor bureaucrats and traders tying the toil and lives of the populace to the interests of the ruling white administrators, businessmen, missionaries and settlers. But to look at it as part of that global system to which it belongs, that is, as part of an extended Europe, is to discover its true character. I repeat, but to look upon it as part of that global system to which it belongs, that is, as part of an extended Europe, is to discover its true character. Visible is a white colonial administration protecting white businessmen, missionaries and settlers who link the toiling Africans to the service of the European ruling classes. And what are the tendons, visible and invisible, which bind the appendage society to Europe? In the economic sphere, there are the roads and railways connecting the farms, mines, markets to the ships in the ports, the banks, the mining and trading companies bound by legal and financial threads to their parent organizations in Europe, the currencies pegged to the franc or the pound and now the dollar, and last but far from least, the commodity prices set in London, Paris and Brussels that determine prices in Africa. In the political sphere, these links are the district officer, the commandant and the resident, the police, the courts, the army and other forms of the arm of the colonial bureaucracy, all headed by the governor and all under control and guidance of the colonial office of the European national government, which send them out to Africa. In the cultural sphere, the links are the colonial schools and the religious and secular organizations which operate as field agencies for nurturing Euro-Africans. Such was the structure of the colonial order. And ladies and gentlemen, such is still our structure today. This last part, to break it down, basically is saying that to say that this Africa is only Africa's problem is to just say that all these people are just working to be sending things to Europe by themselves. Nobody send them. But we know that people send them to take this gold, to take our land, to all these their companies. You see, when you see a bank in Nigeria, when you see a bank in Nigeria, you think the bank is a Nigerian bank. That bank is not a Nigerian bank. That bank is a European institution. It's tied to the IMF, it's tied to Citibank, it's tied to all the banks in Europe and America. In fact, the Europeans own large shares of all the banks in Nigeria. Tell them to declare their shareholders. When Access Bank was buying Diamond Bank, the Carlyle Group, which was one of their biggest shareholders, wrote a letter against this that they were not consulted. That's how I found out that Carlyle Group, you should investigate Carlyle Group. They are the Bush family, Saudi Arabia, family, all these evil people, they own that racist company that is selling arms, killing people all over the world. They control our money here in Nigeria through our banks. So when you see that you go to Europe, black people in Europe and America will tell you that they cannot get money from the bank. Bank don't give them loan because all the banks are black owned and white owned. Come to Africa where our banks are black owned, we still can't get no fucking loan. And when they even give you loan, it's 30% interest rate, 25 to 30% interest rate. How is that a loan? How is that a loan? You know, so I mean, we can go on and on about this, on and on about it, but we must at least be clear that we can see the reflection of the colonial order in the order that is still existing today. Meaning that those pillars that oppress us, those pillars that dehumanize us still exist and is still being managed by the same black faces that they put in charge of it in the colonial order. You understand? So now the governor is no longer white. The governor is black. Yes, but this is making sure that the things that need to go to England from Africa are going to England from Africa, to the detriment of African people. Now, I don't care if we are sending our surplus to them. I don't care if we are sending our excess to them. But we are in need. We are in want. And then to finally finish the program today, somebody sent me a DM. How would I put it? In response to me comparing Dangote's 2 billion to one Oyibo 2 billion. So basically, they said I was wrong in my analysis, that because the refinery that person bought was that amount because the refinery was old. They said the refinery was old, that's why it was 2 billion. They said refinery in a car. They think refinery is Benz, that old Benz is more expensive than old Benz. In fact, some old Benz are more expensive than new Benz if it's well maintained. Refinery is refinery. You can do 167 barrels or 670 barrels just like that. It's the same shit. It's a refinery. It's not a latest car. Who do you think you're talking to, you people? Wake up from you. You're not coming. Don't be sending me nonsense. It's because it's old. But it's still doing the work that Dangote's own is doing. 670 barrels every day. Still as Dangote. But it's old. Is Dangote not ashamed? You shouldn't have built a new one that will do more. You are doing the same thing that a 100-year-old refinery is doing in America. You are making noise and you are coming to me with that in my DM. Don't let me start slapping you people. I've gone to invent e-slap. There is now e-slap, electronic slap. There is now electronic slap for all you idiots that come to my DM to try and be supporting your master with nonsense arguments. Don't bring that rubbish. That's why somebody asked me a stupid question on TV that might say, Seun, your career is over. And me too, I gave him stupid answer. How can my career be over? I just bought 35 million naira car. They say me I'm supporting elitism. Then me I am buying things. Why would I've made something before I buy something? Tell your masters of industry to also, that's what they're having them. They have to make. Tell your masters of industry, they have to make. Not just be buying. We want them to make. And refining is not making, it's processing. This is the processing. We want manufacturing. From resources to final products. We don't want processing plants. We are tired of processing plants. We want manufacturing industries. For us, we want our Ajaokuta steel mill to start working. So that we can start building things with steel that will last long in this country. Create jobs for people. They bring in your useless. Let me slap you. Oh, electronic slap don't deal. To run here. Whoa. You go just want to put your phone for ear like this, receive call. Now call, it will call you, it will ring. But you go carry on. You go not say that the ancestors we don't load the slap for the car. You go put that for your ear like this, eh? Hey, yeah. You go be like thunder. So thank you everybody. We as motherland people, as we do like this show, we have to understand that it is our life, it is our humanity that has been humanized, that has been monetized. It's our humanity and our lives that is being monetized by these treacherous people. You understand? That they create hunger in their own land and applaud themselves that they are making business. You understand? Because I don't know who the fuck they think they are. That they take things that belong to everybody, monetize it, and think that that money is for only them. You understand? So that was the colonial order. And this is what I'm telling you. So we are not different. And how Africa was, the last one, the part one, shows us that we are ripe again. Look at what is going on in Europe and America. Global warming, everything. If they say, okay, their land is no longer inhabitable, they want to come back to Africa. What can we do to stop them? They will come back, and this is what they will repeat again. They will take everything from everybody. Nobody can do anything. So thank you everybody for joining the live, and I'm happy that I've been able to fulfill this, my promise to everybody. Follow us at MOP Center. MOP Center. That's MOPCENTRE. MOPCENTRE, to see how you can join the movement. DM us, see how you can join the party, or you want to see how you can just be a part of the movement and listen to conversations and join with your own ideas, because we believe that, we need everybody on board to make this happen. Thank you everybody for sharing this Saturday afternoon with me, and we're able to discuss the things that really, really bother us as Nigerians. Ciao.